So when you think Karl Marx, what's the first thing that comes up? Probably Das Kapital, right? Economics, revolution. Maybe that very serious beard.
Yeah, that's the standard image, isn't it?
But what if I told you that behind the theorist, there was this incredibly passionate reader of literature? I mean, a guy whose thinking was really shaped by everything from like ancient epics to contemporary novels.
Oh, absolutely. It's not just some quirky side fact. His engagement with literature wasn't just a pastime. It was, well, kind of fundamental to how his ideas developed.
Right. It feels like a missing piece of the puzzle.
It really does.
Yeah.
The picture of Marx as just this dry economist, just incomplete. His whole life, literature was there, shaping his critique, even his language.
Okay, so that's what we're diving into today, this less seen side of Marx. We want to explore how literature kind of fueled his revolutionary thought, how his ideas then created this powerful way of looking at art, and how concepts like, world literature or alienation are still incredibly relevant now.
Exactly. And we've got some great sources to draw on that review of S.S. Pryor's Karl Marx, and world literature is fascinating, and Martin Pürchner's work on Goethe, Marx, Ibsen. Connects a lot of dots.
Should be some real aha moments, I think. So let's start at the beginning. The young Marx. We don't usually picture him writing poems, do we?
No, you really don't. But Pryor's book shows us exactly that. A young guy wrestling with ideas, but also writing verse, even starting a novel.
Seriously, a novel.
Apparently. Didn't finish it, but yeah. And Pryor points out something really interesting. Marx, at first, found Hegel's philosophy, big philosophical system of the time. He found it abhorrent.
Abhorrent. Strong word.
Well, he saw it as these like mechanical grinding cogs of reason, cold, rigid, and poetry plays. That was his escape hatch, a way to get beyond that purely rational framework.
Okay. So it taps into that whole tension in German philosophy back then between the rational, systematic side and the artistic feeling side, like Kant and Hegel were wrestling with too.
Exactly. It wasn't just Marx's personal thing. It was a major intellectual current. He was drawn to that romantic world of feeling and art as a kind of antidote.
But that didn't last, right? I mean, he obviously became famous for his own complex system.
No, it didn't last in the way he maybe first intended. He kind of famously said he felt himself borne towards Hegel, almost against his will, like a false siren pulling him into the arms of my enemy.
Wow. So he gets pulled back to reason.
Yeah, and Press suggests Marx realized his own poems they couldn't hold up against the critical standards he was starting to develop. He needed that conscious, rational element.
So the poetry gets left behind.
Not exactly wasted, though. This is the cool part. Pryor argues those thwarted aspirations gave him metaphors, ways of thinking, analogies that he then used to understand things outside literature.
Like what?
Like using literary analysis to expose the brutal mechanics of class exploitation. He'd take romantic writing that tried to prettify reality and just sort of dismantle it, showing the harsh economic truths underneath.
Yeah.
The poet became a critic.
That's a fascinating shift. Okay, let's talk about world literature. The title of Pryor's book points right to it. It sounds modern, but it has older roots.
Oh yeah, much older. The term itself, Welt literature, was actually coined by Goethe way back in 1827.
Goethe? Really? Not someone in, like, Paris or London?
Nope, from Weimar, which was comparatively small. And Goethe's take was interesting. He said it was an age at hand, like it was coming anyway, but also something everyone must strive to hasten its approach. So both inevitable and something to work towards.
And Marx and Engels pick this up directly in the Communist Manifesto, don't they?
They do. 1848, they state, from the numerous national and local literatures, there arises a world literature. They explicitly link it to capitalism's spread to globalization. As goods and capital cross borders, ideas and stories do too.
Makes sense, like a cultural side effect of economic change.
Right, but Marx didn't see it as purely mechanical. Pryor gives examples, like Marx being amused by delegates at the First International talking about getting rid of nationalities, while all speaking French.
Right, the irony.
Exactly. Or how Marx fiercely defended German music against what he called its pale, pallid English equivalent. So he saw it as a living trend, complex, not just everything becoming the same. National characters still mattered.
Okay, fast forward to today. World literature is huge academically. Globalization, translation, it's all feeding into this desire to look beyond just, the literature of the big modern empires.
Absolutely, and translation is key here. Some theories see it as a problem, an insurmountable obstacle almost.
But it's not.
Not according to Goethe or Marx implicitly. Goethe saw knowing languages, especially German then, as inhabiting a marketplace where all nations offer their goods. Translation is the marketplace mechanism. It makes things available.
Like Milan Kundera saying most literary giants read their favorite foreign authors in translation anyway.
Exactly. You don't necessarily need the original language to grasp the power of the work, especially in translation's role in this global flow.
Which brings us to Ibsen. Henrik Ibsen, the Norwegian playwright. This is a fantastic example, isn't it?
Yeah. Incredible case study. Writing in Norwegian, spoken by just a few million, yet he becomes the second most performed playwright globally. Only Shakespeare beats him. How?
How does that happen? From the periphery?
Well, Martin Puchner argues that very provincial provenance, being from a smaller nation, was actually an advantage.
How so?
There's a kind of provincialism of the center. Big cultures often just expect everyone else to come to them. But smaller nations often have to look outwards. Ibsen chose exile, went to Italy and Germany.
Not forced, but a choice.
A choice to escape the limits of the Norwegian theater scene. And there, he wrote these amazing closet dramas. Brand, Peer Gynt, huge, sprawling plays meant more for reading than staging initially. He was already thinking world literature.
Aiming for a global reader, not just a local audience.
Precisely. And even when he came back to Norway and wrote his famous realist plays, like A Doll's House, that world literature mind in it stuck.
Even with all the specific Norwegian settings and details, like Stanislavski famously importing actual Norwegian furniture for his Moscow production.
Right. But Puchner argues the universality wasn't the style of the furniture. It was the furniture itself, as a symbol of bourgeois life.
Ah, how it was bought, what it cost, what it meant to own it.
Exactly. It ties right into Marx's idea of the commodity fetish, where we obsess over the thing and forget the human labor and social relationships behind it. Ibsen captured the specific anxieties and dreams of the Norwegian middle class, but did it in a way, this poetry of capitalism, that resonated everywhere, because those dynamics were becoming global.
Revealing the sort of hallucinatory dimension, as Puchner puts it, of that whole way of life. That's powerful. Okay, let's pivot to another core Marxist idea. Alienation and Fremdung. How does this economic concept connect with art?
It's deeply connected. For Marx, alienation wasn't just, feeling a bit down or disconnected. It was an objective condition baked into capitalist industrial production.
Objective, meaning real material.
Yes, a real threat to individual psychological and social health, as one source puts it. It stems from workers being separated, estranged from the very things they create. You make something, but it's not yours. It belongs to someone else, and it even stands over you as an alien power.
Okay, unpack that a bit. Marx talked about layers of this, didn't he? How it gets progressively worse.
He did in his early writings, the 1844 manuscripts. He outlines 4 kinds of degenerating alienation. First, alienation from the product of your labor.
The thing you make.
Right. The more you pour yourself into making it, the more powerful that alien objective world becomes, and the poorer your own inner world gets. You're diminished by your own creation because it's taken from you.
Okay, what's second?
Alienation from the activity of labor itself. Work stops being a fulfilling life activity, a free expression of what makes us human. Our species life, as Marx called it. It just becomes a means to survive, to earn enough to eat and sleep so you can work again.
Just drudgery, basically.
Pretty much. Third, alienation from our species life itself, which also means alienation from other humans. We start seeing people instrumentally as means to our own ends rather than ends in themselves. Social connection phrase. And the fourth stage, alienation from yourself, from one's own self. This profound numbness sets in. You become a cog in the machine, totally disengaged. Your individuality feels superfluous to the repetitive work.
That's bleak. Engels really highlighted this change, didn't he? Contrasting that older, maybe romanticized cottage industry world with the harsh reality of the factories.
He did. That contrast between a supposed idyllic pre-capitalist world, families working at home, maybe some leisure, community, and the bleak and personally stultifying capitalist status quo is stark.
When you see echoes of this even in non-Marxist literature, like Dickens.
Absolutely. Think of Mr. Dombey in Dombey and Son. He's so warped by business values, he treats his own children like assets. His son is just the company. His daughter barely exists until he needs her after his financial ruin. It's like literature independently verifying Marx's point about how commerce could corrode human bonds.
It's kind of amazing then, given how central this all feels, that Marx himself didn't write more about art and aesthetics directly.
It is surprising, yeah. His actual comments are pretty scarce, sometimes even seem a bit contradictory. He never laid out a full systematic theory of art.
Which left the door open for others, right? Like post-Marxist aesthetics.
Exactly. Thinkers like Herbert Marcuse picked up the threads. In the aesthetic dimension, Marcuse argues art isn't just a nice extra, a luxury. It can actually step outside the everyday social reality by presenting a fictitious world that paradoxically feels more true than the established reality. It can break the monopoly of how things seem, showing both the flaws in the present and maybe hinting at a different future.
So art as a revolutionary force, in a sense, exposing alienation, projecting something better.
Potentially, yes. But that leads to a really tricky question.
Which is,
if art's job is partly to critique alienation and imagine a world beyond it, what happens if you get that world? If the revolution succeeds, alienation is overcome. Does art just stop?
Does it wither away like the state, as the saying goes?
That's a provocative thought.
Yeah.
It highlights how art is this two-edged sword. It can liberate, but it can also just mask problems or become irrelevant once those problems are supposedly solved. What would art do in a utopia?
A question to ponder. So Marx didn't leave a neat theory of art, but his ideas clearly sparked a whole field of literary criticism. How did that evolve?
Well, the early Marxist critics tended to take more direct approaches, seeing art as a mirror reflecting society's class struggles.
Like Plekhanov or Lenin looking at Tolstoy.
Exactly. Or Trotsky's Literature and Revolution. They focused heavily on the content, on how literature could be a tool in the political process. Does it help the revolution or hinder it?
Seems a bit instrumental, like judging art only by its message.
It could be, yeah. And later critics definitely moved towards more sophisticated approaches. Think of the Bakhtin Circle in Russia.
What was their focus?
Language, dialogue. They distinguished between monologic forms like epic poetry, which they saw as kind of authoritarian, one single voice, and the novel, which is full of different voices, perspectives, social languages, heteroglossia. They saw the novel form itself as having a kind of inherent resistance.
Interesting. And then Western Marxism, people like Adorno, Benjamin.
Right. They shifted the focus even more towards form. How does the very structure of a literary work embody or crystallize ideology? Walter Benjamin's famous essay on art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction.
About how photography or film changes art, losing its aura.
Precisely. He explored how losing that unique aura might actually give art new political power by making it reproducible and accessible to the masses. It moved way beyond just looking at the plot or characters.
And how did this translate into the English-speaking world?
You had critics like Raymond Williams developing what he called cultural materialism, really integrating Marxist ideas about language, economics, and literature into a study of culture as a whole process.
And Terry Eagleton.
Eagleton, yeah, a student of Williams, dug into the ideology of the aesthetic itself, how our ideas about what counts as art or beauty are tied up with power. And Frederick Jameson famously connected literary texts back to what he called the non-transcendable horizon of history as class struggle.
Even applying to postmodernism, right?
Yes, analyzing postmodern culture through a Marxist lens. It shows the adaptability of the core ideas.
Which brings us pretty much to today. What's Marxist literary criticism looking like now in the 21st century, especially after things like the 2008 crisis?
Well, that crisis definitely created a new receptivity to Marx, as Andrew Rowcroft noted. People started looking again at these critiques of capitalism, and critics are applying the tools to really contemporary stuff.
Like what? Can you give an example?
Sure. There are analyses of Ridley Scott's Alien Cart, the sci-fi horror film, reading it as an allegory about new enclosures, like the privatization of space, mirroring early capitalism's enclosure of land.
Wow, okay. That's a creative application.
Or looking at a contemporary novel like Jonathan Franzen's Purity, analyzing its critique of internet culture, transparency, and how that relates to maybe the failures of certain leftist political projects. Even studies of Snapchat or Instagram, looking at how images function as a form of abstract labor, as commodities in the digital sphere.
So it's really branching out, tackling current phenomena.
Absolutely. It's so diverse now that, as the critic Imre Shemin has argued, maybe you can't even talk about a single Marxist literary criticism anymore.
Too many different strands.
Yeah, it's pluralistic, constantly adapting. But Suman also says there's a kind of collective regenerative effort, underlying it all a shared sense that Marx's writings still offer essential tools for understanding and critiquing global capitalism today.
Okay, so wrapping this up. What's the big takeaway for someone listening, trying to make sense of the world we're in, full of stories, media, economic pressures?
I think it's that Marx's critique even though it started over 150 years ago, remains, as Samir Amin put it, both essential and insufficient.
Essential and insufficient. Meaning?
Meaning, it gives us vital tools to understand the deep structures of capitalism, alienation, ideology, but the work isn't done. Amin said being a Marxist isn't about dogma, it's about continuing the work Marx began. The critique itself has to keep evolving, keep questioning, even critiquing itself.
Because the world keeps changing.
Exactly. Marx is boundless, Amin says, because the radical critique he started is boundless, always needing to be updated, refined, applied anew.
So a final thought then, perhaps for you listening, as you encounter stories, films, even ads today, think about how they might be engaging with our current economic reality. Are they reflecting it, challenging it, ignoring it? What kinds of contradictions for the past are they maybe trying to smooth over or synthesize into something new? And what new forms of, say, alienation, or maybe even new kinds of world literature facilitated by digital tech are they revealing, maybe without even intending to? What could your own deep dive reveal?